Hello and welcome to this episode of Simply Saturday, where I get to show you a card that is fast and easy to make. My name is Julie, and this is Stamp with Julie Baum. Today we're going to be making a card using the stamp set Hello Ladybug, and we're going to stick with kind of ladybug colors. We're going to do red, black, and white. I'm really happy to show you this card. There is one extra feature of this card that is a little bit extra, and so I will guide you through that portion if you choose to do that piece a different way. All right, so what I'm starting with is a piece of Poppy Parade cardstock. It measures 4 1/4 inches by 11 inches, and I have given it a score line at 5.5. At 5.5, which is the center of the 11-inch length, and I'm going to fold that on my score line and reinforce the fold with my bone folder. Okay, then I have a piece of black and white designer series paper. This particular paper was from a set of 12 by 12 called Pattern Party designer series paper. It has since retired. It was a bunch of bright, beautiful colors and patterns on the front and all black and whites on the back. And since we periodically offer designer paper that comes in a black and white, I'm sure that you can either substitute something that is close if you don't have this particular paper. All right, so I'm going to attach this. This piece measures 4 inches by 5 1/4. And I'm attaching it with my liquid glue. All right, then I also have a piece of basic white cardstock, also measuring 4 inches by 5 1/4. This is going to be for the panel that goes on the inside. All right, I have a black rectangle that I have cut prior to filming using the Stitched Rectangles dies. If you are going to cut this rectangle from your dies, or if you're just going to cut it with a paper trimmer, you need a rectangle that measures about 2 1/8 by 3 1/2 inches. And then we have a piece of white cardstock that's going to go on top of that. That's just a tiny bit smaller. It is 2 inches by 3 3/8. That's going to go on top. Then I have a scrap of white, a scrap of black, and a scrap of Poppy Parade. All right, so to begin with, let's make our ladybugs. So we're going to take our black scrap, and without having to do any stamping, we're just going to use the punch and the black cardstock to create 2 ladybugs. So I need 1 ladybug body and a second. All right, that one flew onto the floor, but not out of reach. Okay, there we go. So I've got my 2 black ladybug bodies. Then we're going to need the ladybug wings. And so, I'm actually going to need a little bit bigger scrap than this. Let me grab this one. We'll use this one in just a moment. All right, so for this, I need to stamp my red wings. And I do want to pay attention to the direction that I'm going to stamp these so that I can easily slide my paper into the punch. Can you see that? So using Poppy Parade and stamping my wings so that they'll easily go into the punch, I need 1 set of wings and a second set. Now, I have no idea why this is, but I do know from experience that my Poppy Parade pad ends up staying wet just a little bit longer than all my other color ink pads. I'm not sure why that is. The reason that I know it is because I have stamped with it and then smudged it. Typically, as soon as you stamp any of our colors from the classic Stampin' pads, you can touch them and they dry so quickly. But for some reason, my Poppy Parade does not dry quite that fast. So I am going to give it a second here to dry. In fact, let's set that aside. Go ahead and stamp our words on this scrap. then we won't rush it. Like I said, I don't know why, just my Poppy Parade. It's the only ink pad out of all of them that doesn't dry quite as quickly. All right, so for the words, we're going to stamp those here on a scrap of white cardstock. And that is going to get punched out with a punch that has retired. It's a 1 3/8 punch. It's actually a little scallop. So look through your collection of dies or punches and find a circle so that you can punch or die cut your words. All right, so there we have that. And then with another punch, this was a 1 1/2 inch punch that we don't offer right now. But punches come and go in the catalogs. And again, you may have a die that is a 1 1/2 inch circle, or you might have this punch from when it was available to order. All right, so I'm still letting that Poppy Parade dry. And in the meantime, we'll put this together and then we'll go back to those wings. All right, so with my liquid glue, I'm just going to attach the words to that little red circle, like so. Okay, now I'll bring this back in and my butterfly punch. By using the punch upside down like this, you can see what you're doing. Line up the shape with the punch. There's the first set. And I'll need to snip this. This is still a good scrap. This will get used for something. And our second set of wings. That way we're all set to put our 2 ladybugs together. All right, so a tiny bit of liquid glue on the back of the wings. And you can see, here, I'm gonna pull in a scrap paper. There we go. So you can kind of see the black body against the white is easier. All right, so I'm gonna attach the little red wings right there. And see, I'm not smearing my ink now, so I gave it enough time to dry, thankfully. And then this one, a little squiggle of glue will be plenty. That was a little messy today, wasn't it? Okay, you can kind of just slide the wings to go right where they need to go. It's fashioned in such a way that just below the head, then the wings line up with the round curve of the body. So it's quite easy to figure out where those go. Okay, now here is the part. Let me set this aside. Here's the part that I said is optional. On your white rectangle, if you weren't going to do the next step, this would just get attached and then the words attached to it, like so. But we're going to do something extra special on this white piece. It won't take long. It is just an extra step. So what I'm going to do is stamp with my Versamark ink, which is essentially a clear ink. And I've got some white embossing powder out and ready to go. And I'm going to use a scrap piece of paper to dump my powder back into the pot. But if you have the Stampin' Up! Accessory pack for heat embossing, you might have that little tray, and that's a fantastic way to go. I'm just going to use a scrap paper for today. All right, so I'm going to stamp 3 of the flowers, and the flowers are in a set of 3. So I'm going to do 1 up here in the top left corner, and I am stamping off the edge of my cardstock, and a second image here on the right off to the side, and a third time down here at the bottom, pretty much in the left corner. Now, it's kind of invisible. You can't really see what I've stamped because of that ink being clear. But as soon as we add our embossing powder to this, you'll be able to see it just a teeny bit. It'll still be very pale, very light. But now you can begin to see, oh, see? Okay, so I'm going to generously pour my white powder all over those 3 stamped areas that I did. And I'm shaking the excess off. Oh, I feel so terrible because I did forget to use my embossing buddy. It's sitting right here. Usually you would want to rub across your piece of cardstock that you're going to heat emboss, and it helps remove static cling. And the reason I know I didn't do it is because I've got extra powder clinging to my cardstock that would not have been there. So bad on me. I'm going to give it some aggressive little flicks here. See if I can get rid of most of that. I still have a trace of it. I'm telling you, the embossing buddy is worth using every time. And here I've totally forgotten. I have a small paintbrush here. Let's see if I can reach for it. It's a bit out of reach, and I just dropped my heat tool in the process. So we're going to ignore that little bit that is clinging in there. Let me see if I can get it off. Once I was all set up to create the card and film for you, certain things are just out of reach, and that paintbrush is one of them. All right, so there's that. We're going to dump our excess embossing powder back into the jar and set all of that aside. All right, let me grab my heat tool that fell on the floor while I was trying to find that paintbrush. All right, it's going to get a little bit noisy for the few seconds that I heat this piece of paper, so just bear with me for a moment. All right, there is our embossed image. You can see me moving the paper around and turning it, looking at different angles. What happens is as the heat and the ink begin to melt together, it goes from a dry, powdery look into a high gloss look. So you can kind of tell from different angles if you've hit it. And even while I'm saying that, I can see one petal over here that still looks a little bit powdery. So I am going to heat it one more time. If you touch an image that has not been heat set, it will smear. And so you do want to make sure that you finish it. Okay, there we have it. Now, the reason I did this is I was looking for something that would dress this piece up, but I didn't want to introduce any new colors. I wanted to keep it black, white, and red. So by doing this, I ended up with a tone on tone, white on white, and I think it's quite effective. So let's put this together. All right, I've got my white piece that I just did heat embossing on. I'm going to attach that here to my black stitched rectangle. And if you did not want to do the embossing, that's totally fine. And you just attach your plain white rectangle. You know, another thing you could do is run that through an embossing folder to give it some texture. That would be fine too. All right, now I'm going to add my words right here. And then this piece is getting added to the card. All right, now out of this whole card, I'll tell you what the hardest part of the whole thing is, and that's right now. I'm going to add this piece to my card that has this designer series paper that's full of vertical and horizontal lines that aren't necessarily super straight. So I have done this before and it looks straight, and then when you're completely finished, it's totally crooked. It was straight with the lines, but not straight with the card. So in an effort to get this as straight as possible, I may actually have to use a ruler, which I don't ever do. Usually eyeballing it is fine, but I don't want it to look crooked afterwards. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay my ruler right at the edge of my card and use that to determine the placement of this piece. Now let me see if I want it that far over. I'm going to slide it a little bit to the left, but keeping it straight. All right, so we're going to go with that. And it is tricky because it does not look straight according to these lines, but I do believe it is straight on the card. All right, so to my eye, that looks straight on the card, and we are going to go with it. I've had this happen before. Like I said, I get completely done and then I step back and it looks very crooked against the lines. Maybe you're using a background that doesn't have lines, like a grid. Maybe yours is checked or polka dot or some other pattern. Okay, it's time to add our little ladybugs. And in working with glue and heat embossing, I've got a little smudge right here. Sometimes that happens. That's life, right? So I'm going to grab my sand eraser and just see if I can take care of that. Oh yeah, that removed it just fine. All right, the sand eraser is something that is a helpful tool to have. It's not a Stampin' Up! Product. I do get these on Amazon, and I will put a link in the description box below this video. I usually use that sand eraser quite often. Okay, we're going to put the first ladybug on, and this one is just going to go flat against the card and kind of at an angle like so. Look how cute. And then for this one, let's add a little bit of whimsy and add it with a wobble. I've got a little extra piece of paper there. All right, a mini wobble is another fun little item. This is not a Stampin' Up! Item, but I can let you know how to find these. And what it does is it adds a little bit of wiggle to the image that you attach it to. So I'm going to peel off the backing. And I don't think there's really any rule to what I'm going to say, but my rule of thumb has been to use this large sticky side attached to my image, my little part that I'm going to have wobbly. And then I peel off this side, and that's the side that goes against the card. Okay, like so. So they're self-adhesive, they're sticky on each side, and then this one's just going to go down here. I'm going to give it a good press so that that mini wobble can stick well to the card, and now you can see that there's a cute little shake and shimmy to that. It doesn't stand up too awful high from the card, and it will go down flat like this when you put it in an envelope, and then it just pops back up. Super fun to use. So there's our card. We're going to add some embellishments to the front. We also want to attach our inside piece, and I think we might need to put a little something on the inside. Okay, so in the stamp set, that looks like the center to the daisy. And let's go ahead and use the flowers. They're already out, they're already mounted. So on the inside, we'll put some red flowers. I won't do any more heat embossing on this card. We need to wrap it up. All right, so on the inside, I think I want these flowers up here in the top corner, like so. And this is going to go on the inside. Now, for the embellishments, I have chosen the iridescent pearls, again, with the goal being to not introduce any other colors. Some of the basic black dots would also work cute on here, but I'm just going to use these pearls. We're going to stick with our white on white. I can use the little putty end of my take your pick tool to easily grab a pearl, and I'll put one in the center of this set of 3 flowers, and one here, that's about in the center of that flower, and a third one down here. So that was really fun to be able to stick with more white on white. And there we have it. There's our cute little ladybug card with a wobble. And again, to make this just a little bit faster and easier, you can skip the embossing part if you wish. I'm so glad that you joined me today for this card tutorial. If you enjoyed it or maybe learned something a little new, please give me a thumbs up and also a comment. I do love to read your comments. If you've never subscribed to my channel, I invite you to subscribe and be sure to click the bell. That is the notification bell so that you get a notice each time I put something new here on my channel. Below this video, there is a box with lots of great information. Inside there, I'm going to put some links to shopping, my online store, so that you can shop for your Stampin' Up! Products there. I will also put some links to Amazon to share some of the extra crafting favorite tools that I like to use. And then of course you'll find a host code so that if you are going to my online store and placing an order, you can use that host code. And what I'm going to do after this card, I will watch for any orders that are $40 or more that are placed with that listed host code, and I will send out an extra treat for those people who order at my online store. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, happy stamping!